the webinar, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So thanks so much for joining today. Our webinar is called Implementing a Consolidated Workflow for Curricular Approval Processes. And my name is Sarah Crane, and I'm the Student Product Manager here at Kuali. We're very fortunate to be joined today by Lyndi Duff, Director of Curriculum Management and Technology at the University of Utah. We're going to jump right in, but if you think of any questions during this webinar, you can submit them at any time using the question box, and we'll address as many of them as possible at the end of the webinar. So I want to start with a few quick questions that have to do with what Lyndi will be presenting today. So as I go through them, think about if any of them apply to you and your institution. Are your processes and workflows out of date? Are you ready to say goodbye to paper forms, buried emails, walks across campus, and other barriers to progress? Is simultaneously managing thousands of courses and programs chaotic? Is there a disconnect between different faculty and administration members, especially when it comes to approvals and workflows? Are you ready to give your institution's unique educational offering the spotlight it deserves? Kuali helps solve these and many more challenges that colleges and universities face on a daily basis when it comes to curriculum management and approval processes. Our story is a bit unique. Kuali's curriculum management software was designed in collaboration with some of the world's leading colleges and universities. They needed a better solution, and we wanted to help. We began working closely with those who would actually be using these tools, finding out their pain points and learning what features they needed to do their jobs well. We're so happy with the results, and one of the best things about the way we're structured as partners with colleges and universities is that Kuali is truly a community. We're working together to improve higher education. We currently offer both curriculum management and catalog management solutions. To put it very simply, curriculum management helps you set up your institution's courses, programs, and other learning experiences in a very organized way. It then makes it simple to administer any ongoing changes or updates to your curricular offering. Catalog management automatically converts your curricular data into clean, well-designed catalogs ready for print or digital use. Anything changed in curriculum management is also changed on your catalog, so they're always in sync and correct. In everything we do at Kuali, we strive to simplify processes, eliminate chaos, provide flexibility, and most importantly, delight our users. And with that, I'd like to turn the time over to Lyndi Duff for the main event, Implementing a Consolidated Workflow for Curricular Approval Processes.
Thanks, Sarah, and Kuali for inviting me to present today. At the University of Utah, we have 18 colleges, 80 plus departments, over 12,000 courses, 100 undergraduate degrees, 90 plus minors, 100 plus graduate degrees, and over 60 certificates. This is kind of just to give you an idea of the scope and the size of our institution, and kind of to describe to you the difficulty of managing such a large process and how we kind of ended up dealing with that. In our history, to give you a little bit of background, we don't have a centralized university curriculum committee, so we would be what they call a decentralized institution, which can lead to some difficulty in managing that large of an institution. And we do have an overall curriculum policy review board, which manages the policies around multiple things that might affect multiple colleges and multiple or all colleges. And we also had a really extensive paper process, as many as you have had. We had at least 5 forms, one for adding a new course, one for changing a course, one for inactivating, one for reactivating, and one for course fees. And all of these were manually processed through my office. We would enter those into our student information system, which is PeopleSoft. And it made this job an extremely data entry heavy job, and we wanted to improve that. And we also had so that was for our courses. For programs, our catalog had some information, but it was often out of date, and the majority of our users would end up only editing the degree audit and not entering those changes into the catalog. So those were constantly out of sync. Then just to give you a little background on our catalog, because that affects our programs, we stopped printing the catalog in 2010, and we went to a web-based catalog, which was just an HTML. It was a really long page of all of the department's information on one page, and the users would print that out, write their changes on it, send that to me, we'd edit that, and then have to send it to our UIT to post that on our web page. And so it was really time consuming and not effective. Mostly people just edited the faculty listings, and we found that the curriculum was constantly out of date. Then in 2013 we went to another software to publish our catalog. We had over 200 users editing in that catalog, and they found it really difficult, and we had to constantly train and retrain those users each time the curriculum editing cycle happened. Then, so we found that we had a need for a curriculum management tool, and with every time I met with someone or I heard about an issue that people were experiencing with curriculum, I would just mention, hey, there's this tool that has that could help you with that. It was kind of laying some of the groundwork for our need to get a curriculum management tool. I would let people know, hey, if you need to know your course is dependent on another course or another program, there's a tool that we might be considering getting that would help with that. Or if you've lost your forms, well, there's a way that we could make this better. If we had an electronic process, then you couldn't lose forms, or they wouldn't get lost on someone's desk. And when information got out of sync, we could suggest an option that, oh, there is another tool that might help us keep this information in sync. So after having about a year of those kinds of conversations in every meeting that I went to, we decided to go with an RFP to purchase a curriculum management tool, and ended up selecting Kuali for that. We knew that we were selecting Kuali, and so we started doing some background work before we actually even had our Kuali implementation. And we started with our process office. This is a sub-office within our project management team. And so we had 2 individuals that came, and we started meeting with every college. And we met with an associate dean and an administrative assistant in each one of those colleges. We wanted an associate dean so that they could give the perspective of why something has that approval and who's involved in that. And then we wanted an admin so that we could determine how those forms actually moved through the process. Were they scanned? Who was collecting the signatures? And so we met with the process office and the colleges together, and we asked these different questions. We asked, how is this process managed from start to finish, and who are the people involved in those processes? So that would be, for every new course, for every change, for every inactivation, reactivation course fee. Who was the person submitting it? What documentation did they require at each level? And as it moved through the process, who touched the proposal, and then who had to sign off on it before it moved on? Did it have to get scanned before it got sent to a certain committee? So we went through every level of step that we could ask. We asked if it was different, if it had a general education requirement. Is it different if it was a degree requirement change? And we documented all of that for each individual area, asking them who were the people, what issues they were currently facing, what they would like to change about the process, what they'd like to keep the same, and if there was anyone else that we should talk to in the process. One of the things that I think was really helpful, or would have been really helpful, is if we could have included more department perspectives, but because of the number of departments that we have, we tried to just capture that through the eyes of the college. And then I'll kind of show you a little bit later how we determined that for each department as well. So here is the workflow that we determined based on all of those processes that all those process meetings that we had. it was, as you can see, it was kind of complex, and there's a couple of reasons for that. It was, first of all, on our form, we used some progressive disclosure on our form to determine which committee it needed to go to. But there are 4 different types of colleges that we have represented here. The first one is our most common, which is we have a college that has departments in it. And that's our first one. The second one is we have colleges that don't have departments and they only have one curriculum committee. Then we have colleges without departments, but they have 3 curriculum committees, one for undergraduate, one for graduate, and one for PhD. And then our most complex, which is the top 2 rows there, are our School of Medicine. And we have the first row, which is our actual MD program and its approval process that was documented. And then the second one is the MD, they're the School of Medicine, but they were not MD students. And those are departments in that college act more like colleges where they don't need college level approval. The approvals only happen within their college, or excuse me, within their department. So that's kind of the workflows that you see here. And it got to be really complex, obviously. Some of the things that we learned didn't work from, this is our first workflow, was that there were many ways that the workflow could go wrong. Either they didn't select the right thing on the form, and it wasn't a required field. There were we had to use departments to actually link to whether or not it should go to a certain step. So we had a lot of different groups added, and if we missed a group and didn't add it to the workflow, then it wouldn't move to the right place. The course level or progressive disclosure fields that we used on the form allowed them to select the right committee, but it didn't work well with our API integration, and so we needed to do it differently. And we figured out that what people actually said in the meetings for our process meetings didn't actually translate in some instances to what they were actually doing or would like to do with their curriculum approvals. So we decided we needed a different way, and we started that with we needed some different questions to change. We weren't asking what course level with progressive disclosure. We wanted to ask specifically which curriculum committee does this need to go to for all levels. I kind of missed, sorry, I missed one of my points. One of the things people didn't like was we had to, in our previous workflow, they had undergraduate and graduate curriculum committees, but we only had one curriculum committee listed in the workflow. So we would list both the chair of the undergraduate and graduate committees. They would both get an email. Only one of them would have to approve it. So it's solving some of those issues. So this is helping us do that. For every department or program, they had to select whether they had one curriculum committee, whether it was supposed to go to the undergraduate curriculum committee only, or the graduate curriculum committee only, or if they had a separate PhD curriculum committee, or if they didn't have any curriculum committee at all, which was common for our programs or our colleges that don't have departments. And then the same thing for the college level. So what happens is, based on all of those decisions that they're making on these required fields, we created one workflow which looks like this. And it looks really big and complicated, but it's a lot better than those because we were able to make it linear. And so there's a couple of things to note before we talk a little bit about why this workflow works so well. The first is that every college has to have its own department. So we used, for example, our College of Humanities had a department that was called Humanities. And this worked well for our APIs because we have the need for that within our APIs, but also because we had colleges that don't have departments, so we needed to be able to skip over a department step, but still have someone in that department role. And so for every department, we added a role that was called Curriculum Administration, and that was our initial approval that we asked for with curriculum, and the initial approval solved a lot of problems for us. It allowed us to edit the issues that we usually had to edit with our PDF forms at the very end of the process. So now we have the opportunity to edit them at the very beginning. And so if they selected the wrong course number, or if they're going against a university policy, or if it's a cross-listed course and we need to submit another type of course with it, then we can see those things up front and don't have to wait till we got the PDF form in our actual hands. And so just to take a look at this, so this is based again off those required questions on the last slide. So the first one is our department all, our general all admin, and the curriculum committee. So I was sometimes the first person to see it. Sometimes if they had a department all admin, it would go to them first. Then it would go to the general all curriculum committee, and then the undergraduate, graduate, or PhD, and then finally the department chair. So that's 6 nodes for each, either the department or program, or 6 for the college or school. And we have, so then it would be replicated with the same part within the college and school. So the college and school, it would go first to an admin who we felt was, a lot of people felt was necessary to make sure it had all of the elements that it needed before it moved on to the curriculum, the correct curriculum committees. So we had, then it goes to the general all curriculum committee, or the undergraduate or graduate or doctorate, depending upon which option they selected, or it might go to none. And then we have finally a course fee approval on there, as well as we notify those that affect the general education. And then the final curriculum admin is obviously my step, where I would review everything that was done so far up to that point, all the approvals were appropriate, and that we were able, it's ready to be pushed into our student information system. So it was a really taking something that was super complex, and this is still complex, but there's a couple of reasons why it ended up working so well, and I'll show you those in just a minute. In order to get the right people in the right places, we needed to ask, who are the approvers in this process? So we needed to update the groups. And since that's an admin only feature right now, we sent one form every year. We're going to send a form to each department and program, and we're going to send a form to each college and school, so that it's yearly updated. They can still change outside of those dates, but at least it's prompting, making sure that we have the right people in the process before they start submitting curriculum forms. And so within this updating the groups, I mentioned before that each college also had to have a department, but we didn't really require them to fill out a department and college form. It didn't make a lot of sense for that. But so for department administrators, that is usually a staff person, again, who in our institution usually is the one submitting the coursework. It may be a faculty person, but oftentimes we find that it's an administrator or a staff person, and they're usually the ones responsible for scheduling or creating the agenda. So we have that department admin step, and they had to list the person who's responsible for that role, or if they don't have it at all, we just ask them to leave it blank. And then we had a separate one that also said that they had to list whether or not it was required for approval in CM, because we had a few people that, though they, for this second step, the curriculum committee chair, faculty curriculum committee chair, they didn't typically require them to approve in CM, and so we wanted to give them the option to say that. Then they have the department program curriculum committee chairs, and again listing whether they have one committee or an undergraduate or graduate or doctorate. And based on those, what they listed on that, that's how we filled out the roles within each group. And then again, also for the college, we asked for the same fields. So a few things that were great about this and some things that didn't work very well. The first is that the things that worked really well is that we had, here are the things that are our favorites. We didn't have people receiving multiple emails. So like with our original workflow, an undergraduate curriculum committee chair and a graduate curriculum committee chair would get the same email. Now they don't. They only get emails for the ones that they're responsible for. The thing that we really like having in there is the initial approval by curriculum, even though it can be cumbersome to add that to every department. When we set it up, it's always set up like that. So it was a lot of work one time. And we really have enjoyed having that because, one, we can make sure that they filled out the correct required fields, because I'll talk about that in a second, but sometimes they selected the wrong curriculum committee. And so we could correct that, as well as correct any policy issues or submit any additional forms that were necessary for our cross listings. The image worked really well because we had a linear workflow, and it made a lot more sense to our users to see one straight line than to have some offshoots. And so we've really liked having that. And I mentioned earlier that one of the issues we had was, for the way that we had the rules, they were so complex that we had to list in certain areas almost every single department except for our School of Medicine departments. And so doing it this way allows us not to have to list every single department or program in the workflow rules, and that means we don't miss any, and so it more often than not is working correctly as long as they select the correct curriculum committee that they had. Things that we plan on changing is the selection of the general all was really confusing to some of our users. They didn't correlate that with meaning we have one curriculum committee in our department. They still, if it was an undergraduate, would select undergraduate only, even though they have one curriculum committee. So we're going to find a different term instead. We were thinking something more along the line of, you only have one curriculum committee, in order to help alleviate some of that confusion. And we're going to be working on reaching out to our individual departments and colleges to see, to get some user testing and to see which would be more useful. As I mentioned, we should have done more education to the users on how to select the correct committee. We're working through some options on training right now, and but we felt like having more education on that would be beneficial. And then up front, we think that building the APIs to match what let me say that differently. So in order to build the form to match the APIs up front, that way we don't have to change the form and it doesn't affect the workflow. And we learned the way that we did that was a little bit backwards. We should have done that first, and we didn't. And so that's really a really complex process made into a linear process, which our users are a lot happier with. There's a lot fewer emails that they're receiving, and the emails they are receiving are really specific to what they actually need to approve. And the second go around in our curriculum, we've had a lot more people happy with what we've been doing. And now I'll turn the time over to Sarah.
Thank you so much, Lyndi. We really appreciate you taking the time to share all of that really awesome knowledge with us and with the rest of the attendees. So if you have any questions, those of you that have been participating for Lyndi about anything she's presented, she's been gracious enough to share her contact information here. We'll be sending this webinar out as well, so if you don't have a moment to write that down right now, you'll be able to see that once we send out the copy of the webinar. We've also included information for Paul Hauser. He's our Director of Customer Engagement. If you'd like to schedule a personalized demo or request more information, or if you have any questions, he's available as well. And my information is here too. So if you have questions specifically for me from the product side, I'm happy to answer any of those if you want to go ahead and email me. On the left, we've also included a URL where you can see a recording of our last webinar. It was titled Leveraging Kuali to Improve Your Curriculum Management Approval Processes, and it includes a pretty in-depth demo of curriculum management if you're interested in that. And finally, we want to just really quickly invite all of you who are attending to our Kuali Days. It's our annual conference. It's happening next month in Austin, Texas. It's a really great event where the Kuali community and higher education administrators from around the world come together to network, learn from each other. We have a great plenary speaker and breakout sessions and other things planned, and Lyndi will be presenting there as well, so we're excited to hear from her again. If you've never been to Austin, it's an amazing city with the best food and drink and entertainment and outdoor spaces, so it's going to be a really great time. Feel free to visit kualidays.com for more information and to register. So the rest of the time we'll be answering questions from the attendees. So if you haven't had a chance already, if you have questions for Lyndi, please feel free to enter them into the questions box and we'll get to those. The first question we have for you, Lyndi, is how did you manage training and adoption when making such a large change, and did you receive a lot of pushback?
Thanks for that question. So we managed it in a couple of different ways. One, I mentioned that we started talking about it a year before we even purchased a curriculum management tool. So when people came to me with issues, I was presenting them with a solution, which was, hey, we have this thing that will help you not lose your forms, or because I can't tell you where they are, and we have this solution that will actually show you the dependencies. And so changes don't get made that affect lots of different departments without them knowing it. And so there was some of that, which is we started talking about it really early because I knew it was something that we wanted. And so when we finally purchased Kuali, we made sure that we had some events that we invited lots of different types of users to. We talked to our associate deans, we notified our chairs, we notified the college deans, we talked to all of the super users, which were what I would consider like our director of undergraduate studies or director of graduate studies. And then we also invited advisors and admins to have information on that. So we were pumping tons of information out to our users, trying to have those with focused types of topics and how it would benefit those individual users, and kind of taking a change management approach on that. And then when we finally purchased Kuali and we began using it, I created 2 to 3 minute short videos to show them how to navigate to Kuali, and then separately how to add a change to Kuali. Things I might change, we didn't have enough training videos. In the future, we're going to be adding some more and about specific topics. So if there's general education, there will be a specific video over that. And again, really short, kind of a flipped classroom sort of environment. And we also are considering using something like WalkMe, which is like an interface that will show them where they need to go on the form. And so it was mass communications and really directed to what those users would actually end up doing in the future.
Awesome. It sounds like you guys were really intentional in how you implemented the software, which I think has obviously made a big difference for you all. Another question that we had, it seems like you put a lot of work into setting up this consolidated workflow process. Once it's set up, what has it been like to maintain?
I've had almost no maintenance since I've set it up. The most difficult part for me was copying it from my courses to my programs and now my emphases that we're going to be using. So it was just replicating it after I've done it one time, and making sure that our users, that we select the right permission, so it's only approve it one time. So rather than having it be unanimous. So those are changing it from unanimous to one time, one approval required was the most complex change that we've had to make. And it's been working really well. We've had a lot of compliments and a lot of support from faculty because we've made their jobs easier and rather than more complex.
That's awesome. One last question for you, and again, if you have any additional questions, feel free to enter them. This question is regarding the workflow that you showed, who at the university was involved in actually building and improving it?
Building that workflow, it was me. I took into account the things that I heard from our first iteration and the issues that we were having with it, and because I knew I needed to make it better. Specifically, the first time that we went out, and people, especially our school business, because they have the 3 curriculum committees, they did not like 3 curriculum committee chairs getting the same email and only one of them having to approve it. And so we had to find a solution for that in order to keep our users happy, because we want them to be supportive, because we want them to be excited to use it and not be resistant to that. So we were really intentional on listening to the people who were resisting the most, and so I found a solution, was able to figure out that we didn't want that to be a progressive disclosure saying, oh, if, you know, by doing the required curriculum committee for the department level and the college level allowed us to bypass all of those issues that people, the biggest concerns that we had heard, and it ended up working really well.
Okay, thank you so much, Lyndi. We really, again, appreciate it. Thank you all for joining us. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be sending a video of this webinar out in case you want to watch it again, or if you want to share it with any of your colleagues. And of course, stay tuned for future Kuali webinars. We have some great ones in the works already, and have a great rest of your day.